Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight for Latino Greeks in Politics, hosted by the Latino Greeks for Biden and Harris Coalition. And we are a coalition of grassroots made up of Latino Greeks from more than 15 Greek-lettered organizations. Our goal is to mobilize our thousands of members across the country to not just go out and vote, but go out and vote for Vice President Biden and Senator Harris. And we're doing this through a number of ways. We're motivating our community to go out there and vote through virtual events such as the one today. On Sunday, we're actually hosting a Get Out the Vote rally. We're also fundraising for the Biden campaign, and we're actively reaching out to members in a sort of my sister's keeper or my brother's keeper type of scenario where we're reminding our members of the reason we were founded, which is to empower us to be leaders in our communities. And the time is now for all of us to step up. So for those of you joining us from home, thank you. You can live tweet the conversation using the hashtag Latino Greeks for Biden Harris. And if you want to get involved with the coalition, you can do that too. On Facebook, we're Latino Greeks for Biden. And on Instagram, we're also Latino Greeks for Biden. On Twitter, it's a little different. On Twitter, we are LG4 Biden Harris. So please go follow us if you don't already, because on social media, we're sharing resources to help the Biden campaign. So for example, states are reaching out to us, asking us to share resources for phone banking in Spanish, because there's this huge need for Spanish speakers to pick up the phone, call folks in the community, and get them motivated to vote, whether absentee, whether in person, however we want in this crazy pandemic. So for this panel, I'll be joined by fellow Greeks involved in politics. There's a great panel who will be joining me shortly, but I do want to let you know that if at any point you have questions for any of our panelists, you can leave them in the comment section and we'll get to those later in the program. So I'll start with just a quick introduction of myself. My name is Audrey Lopez. I am a member of Sigma Lambda Gamma National Sorority Incorporated, and I became a member in spring 2009 at the University of Tampa. So I want to bring in my first panelist, who is the Honorable Delia Garcia. She serves as the Cabinet Secretary for the Kansas Department of Labor and was confirmed by the Senate on May 3rd, 2019. Delia made Kansas history because she became the first Latina and the youngest female to serve in the Kansas Legislature in 2004. She is a member of Kappa Delta Chi Latina Service Sorority Incorporated. So let's welcome Delia.
Thank you, Audrey.
Hi, Delia. Welcome. My next panelist is the Honorable Emerita Torres. Emerita is the Director of Policy Research and Programs at the Soufan Center. It is a nonpartisan strategy center dedicated to making sense of global security issues. But even more impressive is that she worked for 10 years at the Department of State as a diplomat, which I have a personal soft spot for. She served in Brasilia, Islamabad, Bogota, Washington, and the U.S. mission to the United Nations, and she's a member of Omega Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. So let's welcome Emerita.
Thanks.
Hello. And my last panelist is Carlos Hendricks-Verdejo. Carlos is a former member of the U.S. Federal Advisory Committee on Juvenile Justice, and he is a founding member of the Latino Action Network. He is a member of Lambda Sigma Upsilon Latino Fraternity Incorporated. So welcome, Carlos.
Gracias. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I said before, keep this as informal. The folks watching us at home are our own fraternity and sorority sisters. So I'm going to start it off just the way you start off every Greek event, which was with a quick roll call. So if you could just repeat your organization for me, when you crossed, where you crossed, and any other Greek information you want to throw out there. I'll start with Delia.
Okay. Delia Garcia, I was charter in September of 2000, fall 2000, at Wichita State University, sister of Kappa Delta Chi Sorority Incorporated.
Wonderful. Carlos?
I am a member of Lambda Sigma Upsilon Latino Fraternity Incorporated, and I was a part of the Taino line in 1979. I crossed on December 1st, 1979. At Rutgers University.
Nice. And Emerita?
How do I follow that? Emerita Torres, I pledged Omega Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated spring 2007. I was a 3, and I pledged at New York University as a chartering member.
Amazing. So now let's get down to business, right? I'm going to start with Carlos. Carlos, it's been a tough 4 years, and a lot of us are wondering about the future of our country. Are we going to be at this toxic place forever, or is there a path ahead? But I think for Latinos in particular, right, Trump has continued to fail our community over and over, whether it was kicking off his campaign calling us murderers and rapists, or whether it was withholding funds from Puerto Rico and Hurricane Maria, or caging children, or we've seen numerous of things that he's done, including this COVID-19 pandemic that's been disproportionately harming our community and closing our businesses. So as Latino Greeks, what can we do to move the country forward in this moment?
Well, thank you for the question. I think first and foremost, my heart goes out to all of the victims or persons who have died in this unbelievable pandemic in these uncertain times, and to the families of all of those deceased individuals from the pandemic. I think that we have to look at the uncertainty of the times that we're living in, first and foremost. They're not normal times. And the more that we have the opportunity to take advantage of what we've been taught to do as Greeks, as Latino Greeks, which is to organize, to work under the most difficult adversity, to be able to take what is given to us and make something positive out of it. I think that we're going to have to be able to do things like we're doing with this panel. Bring information to our brothers and sisters, go out into the communities and organize, continue to organize, and use this opportunity to do something good with something that has been so bad. I take the liberty to say that Greek organizations have been a blessing for the Latino community, because at the time, for example, when I began my fraternal but livelihood, put it mildly, we didn't have the resources that we have now. We didn't have the Delia Garcias, the Emerita Torres, who were making history on a national level for us. And so our biggest challenge was to create opportunities for those that were less fortunate, that had the opportunity to go to college, that otherwise, if it wasn't for us as children, pretty much, we're 18 and 19-year-olds, when we organized and developed these fraternities, we took a challenge that was very difficult at the time. Now, I think a lot of the newer frat and sororities, they take it for granted. But at the time, we had challenging time. We were fighting staying in school, and we were fighting not being sent home after the first semester. We were fighting the fact that we didn't have nobody to go to if we needed help. And the frat and sorority family really created that support system. And I go back to say, to answer your question in terms of, I think that going forward, we need to continue to organize. We need to continue to demonstrate. We need to continue to build coalitions, okay, and meaningful coalitions that we are going to need as we move forward. Right now, we have lived in the worst times of all of our lives. This guy in Washington, Trump, has really devastated a lot that has been achieved through the civil rights movement, through our movement as students, and as a Greek movement, as Latino Greek movement. So I think that what is next is for us to keep focused, to maintain a positive position in terms of that sí se puede, that we can continue to move forward, we can continue to develop leadership, we can continue to organize in our communities for people to get out and vote, to And I think that is really what we need to do.
I love what you said, Carlos, about how back in your time, there weren't like the Delias of the world or the Emeritas of the world or these high profile Greeks in politics who were doing great work within the elected space, right? So Delia, I want to turn it to you. And I know that you know what it's like to run a campaign and you know what it's like to be voted in by the people. And for many candidates, it is that grassroots movement and coalitions such as Latino Greeks for Biden-Harris that not just put elected officials in power, but help to keep them in power. So what role can grassroots organizations like Latino Greeks for Biden play in this election?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And to the other panelists, it's exciting to be here with y'all. I think there's like 3 things, 3 to 5, because there's really 5, that we could do as Latino Greeks. And one that is to sign up to do phone calls. They have the Llamando Contigo. If you're bilingual, they need the most help with this, especially in some of the targeted 16 states that include Florida, Arizona, Texas. And so, I can list those in a few, but that's one, right? Also the late program, which is these last 2 to 3 weeks. So those are both, pretty cool. It's super easy. I've been doing it myself these past few weeks and organizing teams to do it. I am happy to host and co-host with our Latino Greeks a phone bank. All you need is a phone and a tablet, and you're ready to roll. But that's a couple of things, and then also the voter protection hotline to staff it. You do not need to be an attorney to staff the hotline. Although we are also looking for attorneys to do the voter protection. And then the 4th thing is super simple: share on social media. Some of the information on Joe Biden. There are a lot of first-time voters who don't know. And if they see one of us, a trusted name, say, "Oh, I'm voting for Joe Biden because blah, blah, blah," or even simply putting www.joebiden.com up is important. And then last but not least, and this one's easy, y'all, and this is important, is to make a plan to vote. And it doesn't end there, to make sure that your immediate family and your circle of friends are doing the same thing. That's, for us Latino families, I know for me, that's 12 for my immediate family.
We got big families. Definitely. And Delia, you mentioned to me earlier that you're in Texas, actually on the ground helping with get out the vote efforts, which is amazing. But I want you to tell our viewers a little more about what's happening on the ground in Texas. What does the atmosphere look like? Is there really this much enthusiasm, or are we making it up?
No, y'all, it is real. So Tuesday, early voting started. There was lines. I had family that were in line for 2 to 3 hours, and then I had one of my friends in line for only 30 minutes. So it really just depends on where you go. I'm here in San Antonio and Bexar County. They even have curbside voting for individuals who can't stand long, or for individuals who are handicapped or for medical reasons can't. Bexar County here in San Antonio and in Austin, I know Houston is doing that too, are able to do that. So, we've been making phone calls every day, doing the Riding with Biden caravans. I worked the presidential campaign here in 2008 and in 2016. And I have to say, this year feels a lot energetic, even with the pandemic. Everyone's being safe with masks on while voting. So the excitement is real. And, Texas is one of the, there's 4 states that we would like to pick up. And those are Texas, Georgia, Arizona, and Florida. So I'm excited to be here in Texas and invite y'all. If you all have some time, we are, the Biden campaign is introducing just a little of the in-person, some of those activities. So if you can get on the phone, cool. If you're also close to one of these states, we welcome y'all.
I am admittedly still a Florida voter. Filled out my absentee ballot and mailed it as soon as that VP debate was over last week. I was like, all right, this is my cue to send this off and just do what I got to do.
Thank you, Audrey. You want to be like Audrey.
And my brothers, if you're watching, my parents, my primos, my sorority sisters, everybody who's in Florida. I crossed in Florida. So all of the sisters watching me in Tampa, Florida and surrounding areas, I'm expecting all of you to vote as well.
Ándale.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit to Emerita. And I said earlier how much I appreciate that you are a former diplomat, because I am part of a diplomatic family. My husband is a U.S. Foreign Service officer. So we just got back to D.C. in July we served 2 years in Nicaragua. Jealous that you've served in Bogota, so maybe one day we'll end up there. But I'd argue that under the Trump administration, right, the U.S. has lost its standing as this like beacon of hope, best nation in the world. So that's where I want to go, and all my dreams are going to come true. And Trump has done crazy things like cozy up to Putin. He's cozied up to Kim Jong-un, and he's really messed with our national standing. So from a diplomatic perspective and a national security perspective, how much harm has he caused the United States? And is there a path forward on that?
Yeah, we're living in really tough times with regards to national security and diplomacy. And thank you for having me. So we have a president who has put his political aims and his ego ahead of country, ahead of our national security and our diplomacy. His selfishness, combativeness, his racist remarks are on the world stage, and it's left us more unsafe, more vulnerable to threats than at any other time in recent memory. And as you said, he's cozied up to dictators, he's alienated allies, and it's a serious problem. We're usually the ones at the table, the United States, at the United Nations, bilaterally around the world, pressing for the principles of human rights, of democracy, of dialogue, and of protecting vulnerable populations, and coming to the aid of the less fortunate. And we've completely backtracked from that in this administration. We haven't said an invasion of democracy. We don't have a leader or an adult in the room at the table. And we are essentially, we've been in the past at least, the leader of the free world. And we are the country that gives others sort of a reality check around our values. And so I think this is causing us tremendous harm. And I'll just give a couple of examples of that. I mentioned we've alienated our allies and partners. We've walked away from Europe. We've egged on a Brexit and a breakup of the European Union. We've taxed our allies. We've applied travel bans against Europe, against countries in the Middle East. I don't know if you recall this, but we applied a Muslim travel ban, and we've called African nations horrendous things. And this is globalized discrimination that this administration has done. I've worked on Syria in the past, and we've alienated our allies in Syria, particularly the Kurds. We walked away from them at a time where they've done so much for us in fighting against ISIS. We walked back critical U.S. commitments, and we've walked away from multilateral institutions. The Paris Climate Change Agreement is a glaring example. The Pentagon has deemed climate change a national security threat, and yet we are the country that is walking away from that. And there's no doubt that climate change is going to affect our energy supply, our infrastructure, how we live. You can see right now what's happening on the West Coast with the fires that are taking place. There's going to be mass forced migration taking place around the world. So it's undeniable that is a national security threat. And so we are more vulnerable as a result. And I would say we're also less safe. I mean, we see a rise in white supremacy, neo-Nazism. They're terrorizing our communities. And this is partially because our president condones this. It's a major threat to our homeland, a bigger threat than ISIS to our homeland, a bigger threat than Al-Qaeda to our homeland. And so that's a huge issue. Right-wing militias, anti-government protesters, and conspiracy theorists. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we've walked away as well from the JCPOA, or the Iran nuclear agreement. This is an agreement put together, with allies, European allies, Russia, China, at the UN. We walked away from that. And so now we have a country that can attack us with a nuclear weapon. And it wasn't a perfect agreement, but it was an agreement that brought a rogue actor to the table that is no longer at the table. So we are more vulnerable as a result. And then I'll also say that we've seen a huge politicization of democratic institutions, of our own democratic institutions. And that makes us less safe. There's been a gutting of the State Department. I come from the State Department. We are nonpartisan civil servants who are here to give the best judgment, the best information, the best substantive knowledge that we can. We're smart, we're good at our jobs. My colleagues at the State Department, have left, many of them. Intelligence agencies have been politicized. Science in this administration has been politicized around climate change, around COVID. And we're no longer respected around the world because of it. We're barely a credible partner in diplomatic spaces. And we've also ignored foreign interference in our elections. We saw this in 2016. We saw this in 2018, and we're seeing it again. And it's not just Russia this time. It's Russia, it's China, it's Iran that are all up in our business, all up in our space. And we're not doing anything about it. And meddling is happening, and the president instead has politicized intelligence, and he's ignoring it. And what has happened is we have a vacuum of leadership that China, Russia, Iran, and other rogue actors are seeking to fill. So to end on that, we're not safer. We're not the leader of the free world that we once were. And I think also the depth of our divisions domestically is affecting our ability to be a leader abroad. You know, if we can't say to a country, do as we say, and we're not a model. Like, we need to be a model for the world, and that's why we need to elect Biden and Harris.
Can I first say you just scared the living daylights out of me with everything that you just listed? I think the TikTok you just gave puts things into a very real perspective of just how much harm has happened in just 4 years. And it makes me wonder, and I'm going to throw this out to everybody, do we come back from that? Like, even if we elect Biden and Harris, how long is it going to take to undo all of that? Well, anybody can take that question. I'm just throwing it out there.
I don't have an answer, and quite frankly, I don't know. Who cares? But my thing is, we just need to get them elected, and let's get started, and get people like Emerita back in there, and those alike who understand, because that's the difference between the Biden-Harris administration and this current administration. The Biden-Harris administration would surround themselves with smart, knowledgeable experts and listen to them and have them, lead the way. And that's how we're going to do this. And the cool thing is we will have some of our hermanas and hermanos from the Latino Greek area in doing this. And we'll be able to continue to uplift each other, because that is important as well.
And one other thing you said, Emerita, which I think we can circle back to how the coalition can help here, is the point of interference in our election from foreign countries. Mm-hmm. So even more reason for why we need to win by a landslide, show up in massive numbers, because there are active folks trying to make sure that this election is illegitimate and that it sways in one direction. So I think that's even more motivation for the work that we do, knowing that there is an active campaign out there trying to make this not work. Mm-hmm. So showing up in massive numbers, making sure on election night they call the results. Right now he's like, oh, I don't know, peaceful transition of power, whatever. I'm not, if I don't win, I'm going to contest it. We're going to be counting votes for months at a time. So on election night, we need to make sure that Joe Biden doesn't just win, but he wins by such a great margin that there is no contesting this election.
Yeah, I mean, I want to just pick up on the initial question. I think, can we come back from this? I think the first thing we need to do is, like, our country needs to go through a process of healing. Like, we've gone through so much over the last 4 years that I do think we can come back from this in 4 years. I think it's going to be super hard to come back from this in 8 years. Like, the degradation of our institutions. So I think the first thing is like a process of healing and restoring our institutions, our democratic institutions, and coming back to truth. Versus disinformation, which the president has spread far and wide. And I think, you mentioned the peaceful transition of power. I used to talk about peaceful transition of power in countries that have struggled with democracy. And not to say that we haven't struggled, but like I witnessed the first democratic transition of power in Pakistan. I never thought that I'm going to be talking about our peaceful transition of power in the United States of America. Wow. This is a problem. So I think, and to your point on foreign interference, I mean, we need to be thinking about who is influencing our election. Like the fissures that are taking place in our country, from racism to police brutality. Foreign countries, I would say malign actors, and some of those that I mentioned are actively taking advantage of that, and they're spreading false news, and they want to activate those fissures so that Joe Biden does not win. Because it's a favorable scenario to have Trump. It's because he is cozying up with Russia. He is not, he's allowing Iran to have a nuclear weapon. They like that. They want that.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, no, I'm hopeful that we are going to reconstruct and, rebuild and come back. And the reason is because overwhelmingly, if we are able, we're going to beat Trump overwhelmingly. And this is going to be an administration that understands the world. It's an administration that understands camaraderie. It's going to be an administration that understands goodwill. And while I do agree that it's going to be a difficult task, I do believe that the world is expecting for us to lead again, and that the world feels that somebody like Kamala Harris, for example, I'm really impressed by her approach in terms of how, as a partner, as a vice president candidate, because when I hear her talk, it's not a bitter talk, which we've heard over the last 4 years. We've heard nothing but nasty things about Latinos. We've heard nothing but, and not only heard, we've seen, children fenced, at the border, or we've seen, countries attacked verbally, countries attacked diplomatically by this administration. And I think the world is ready for a change as much as we are. So in order for change to happen, there's going to be a need for us, and I don't think it'll be overnight. I agree with you, Emerita. It's going to take time, and I'm sure your experience is wiser than mine. And but I think that the United States has been through this before. We went through it after World War II. We went through it after the Korean War. We went after it in the 60s when I was a little kid. And the people were in the streets rioting and protesting and without rights and looking for rights. The issue is going to be an issue of race and race, identification and coming out of the racist White House that we have now into one where the country has to come through. I see it in the protests. I see it in people standing in lines by the hundreds and by the thousands right now, wanting to vote and cast their votes ahead of time. I mean, in record numbers. I've never voted ahead of time. This is the first time I've done it in my life. So there's an excitement, there's a energy out there in the streets, but more importantly, there's a faith that that we're going to come out of this. Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah. I've realized that folks that I know who've never cared about politics in their lives are voting this year, which is so different from 2016, where I think a lot of our generation or of like the people I knew were so, well, I don't like the candidate, so I'm not going to go vote. Whereas this time it's more like, even if he's not the perfect candidate, I have to go out and vote because my life is literally at stake if I don't. So there's been such a shift that I want to remain positive. I don't want my heart broken the way it was in 2016, but I have a small glimmer of hope that I'm holding on to. And we have some Q&A coming in from the comments. If anybody else watching has questions, please add them to the feed. But we've got a question from Catherine Rivera, and she says, what can we as Greeks do to fight against voter suppression? So any of you can feel free to take that one.
I mean, I think the first thing that we have to do is call it out. Like, call it out when we see it. I think, at the national level, you have the president talking about fraud as it relates to mail-in ballots. That is disinformation, straight up. Like, there has been very, very few cases of mail-in ballots that have been fraudulent. So, like, we need to call this out. We need to encourage people to mail in their ballot if they're comfortable, or vote in person if they're comfortable. But we need to debunk that myth. And I think, poll watching is going to be critical in this election. The way that we, again, like, we have voting observation around the world, right? Like, I've done that before in other countries. Now it's going to be important to do it in the United States. Wow. So we need to observe the polls.
Yeah, and I would just add to take advantage of these next 19 days to volunteer, especially in the voter protection. But it will be key for you to record any kind of voter suppression, because no case can be pushed if we don't have evidence. So whatever state you're in, whatever city you're in, get as many details, photos, videos where permitted. Obviously, there can't be videos inside the voting booth, but as much as information you can get, because that is how past cases have been won, because we had evidence. So I would highly encourage that. And then also to volunteer to be a part of the voter protection, either hotline as a non-attorney or an attorney with the actual voter protection program.
Wonderful. I have another question for my panelists, and it's, what issue most drives you to vote in this election and why? There's so many of them, but what is your top issue? And I'll go with you, Delia, because you're shaking your head up and down. So I'm assuming you're very passionate about this one. So go for it.
Well, I am, and it's the reason, and not really one issue, and it's my family. I don't have my own children, but I have nieces. I have a whole bunch of nieces and nephews, and they're all little, and they all have to live in this country after I'm, gone, and they have to live in this climate. And I want whoever's in power now to be responsible in that and actually acknowledge science. I want someone who will take care of my mother, who is, on Medicare, and not treating her like a number. And to my age group, the jobs right now, there's so many unemployed people. And what are we doing to help our unemployed and support, whether it be programs, whether it be even tuition for those young people? Latinos are generally young. The average age voter right now of Latinos is between the ages of 22 and 29. That's us. And so we're going to be around a lot longer. So for my sorority sisters, everybody that I love, so not only my own family, but my extended family, that's why I'm voting.
Carlos?
Our future depends on this election. And the most important thing that we have is our ability to vote. This is probably the most critical election in our history. And I want to say that, keep it that simple. It's just that important to vote.
And Emerita?
Yeah, it's hard to say one reason, but I would say it's the demise of our democracy. And we've seen it live, like the politicization of our institutions, the disrespect by this president of our institutions and of civil servants has been just dramatic to see. And it affects us at all levels. I think, this presidency more than any other has taught me, at least, and I've worked at the federal level before, but it should teach everyone how influential a president can be in your local day-to-day life. Like, obviously our local officials matter so very much, but the influence that this president has had on our mental health, on our employment, on our physical health, on our healthcare has been so dramatic. So I think, it is really about our democracy at this point and saving it.
Agreed with all points. I want to flag something in the comments that I think is worth highlighting, and it's that as Latino Greeks, we should also help as much as we can fill out absentee ballots, because Maritza Rodriguez just said, go over the instructions with the people in your family who are filling it out, because her parents almost put it in the wrong envelope. So it's like the little things that can make your vote or your ballot not be counted. So as Latino Greeks, as the messengers, as sometimes the leaders in our family, just, making sure that we're helping the people that we know and love make a plan to vote, which leads me to my next question. And it's the best thing to do before an election is to make a plan to vote. I said earlier, my plan was, I already knew it, request my absentee ballot, fill out my absentee ballot, send my absentee ballot. Also made sure my mom requested her absentee ballot, my dad, my husband. My brothers have all decided they're going to go vote in person. So everyone in my household has a plan to vote. So what's your plan to vote? Carlos, what's your plan to vote?
I've already voted in New Jersey. We have by mail state. So the issue here is to be able to make sure that everybody around me, my neighbors, everybody who I have in contact with email or Facebook, that they vote and that they get counted. This is an election that has so many issues at stake. When we talk about immigration, when we're talking about, our democracy, when we're talking about the ability to bring in, laws and legislators and judges and all of the people that are important in the decision making of our future is at stake. So I'm just trying to get the word out as much as I can to as many people as I can, and I hope that all our Latino Greek brothers and sisters do the same, that we go out there and put the same energy that we put into our organizations, into the streets, and into the, now with all the social media and everything, all the tools that we have to facilitate this process, and just let's overwhelmingly beat up on this guy in Washington.
Emerita, what's your plan to vote?
So I am voting early. In New York, we have early voting. So you have the three options. You can vote on election day. You can vote early, about a week and a half early, or you can, mail in your ballot. I'm voting on Saturday, October 24th. This is the first day. I'm going to be there at my polling site. I'm going to bring my friends, and we're going to do this. And I'm excited.
That sounds like a plan if I've ever heard one. She's like, I got the date, I got the time, I know where I'm going, and I know who I'm bringing with me. So I love that. We are going to wrap up soon because I know folks want to watch VP Biden's town hall tonight. But there was one question in the comments that I think is the perfect way to wrap up this panel. And it's, when everything is said and done and all of this is over, what work do we continue doing? So how do we ensure that the work doesn't end on election day? And I open that up to whoever wants to take it.
We continue registering the voters. We continue doing everything that we're doing right now. Is my thing. I've been working in elections since 1996, since I could vote, and I haven't. It's only intensified. And with the census, that's wrapping up, those numbers are what we're going to do with redistricting. That's the next fight that's coming. And to be involved at the local elections, at the county elections, the state elections, and federal. Like, so many times people think, oh, the presidential is the main one. No, every election is. So we treat every election moving forward like this one. And wait, can I just add one more thing? And y'all run too. Before we started this, Emerita and I were recollecting, I remember seeing another woman, Gloria Molina to be exact, another Latina that I thought, wow, the possibility. I never thought of that until I saw her and read her book. And I have stayed committed ever since 2004 when I was elected to the House of Representatives to do the same. That's how I pay it forward. So when Emerita or somebody else calls me for advice, boom, like at least I can give you this and this and this. So consider it. Studies show that women have to be asked 5 to 7 times. Women of color need to be asked 7 to 9 times. This is one of the asks. Okay, make times 6. Okay, just pretend I already asked 6 times. Please consider that, because we need leaders like you all.
Yeah, and if I can, I'll just add really quickly. I called Delia when I was considering running for office. So she's the person that I called. So I take that advice and take her advice 100% on that. I think in terms of the day after the election, I think, we have to hold this administration accountable. Whichever administration is elected. I hope that it goes our way. I really, really do. But there are, there's a lot of talk about going back to normal. But I think that there's going to be a new normal. There's going to be an evolution of the demands that we have to make on any administration, for people of color, for Latinos, for African Americans, across our country. And so we need to start thinking about, after this election, we work hard, but then we have to hold this leadership. Whoever gets elected, again, it's a Biden-Harris administration. For me, I hope we need to hold them accountable for the things that we need.
Agreed. Carlos, any parting words?
I think that we have to look at the aftermath and the time that are coming up after the elections. The same way that we look at the development of the Latino Greeks, where Latino fraternities, sororities, and fellowships, were created as a result of an intent to make a contribution to our communities. This is a contribution to the empowerment and the survival of our communities. So when we look at this after the election, we have to continue to be consistently active, not wait 4 years to become active. We need to be consistently active in the process of developing a fire that continues to burn, right? That we just continue to build on what we know is a damaged democracy. We have experienced something over the last 3 years that none of us thought that we would ever experience, which is the attempt to demolish a democracy of the greatest country in the world. And so when we look at this, we look at it as opportunities. there'll be many opportunities for us to contribute and to be heard as a community, as a Latino community, in these years to come. We have to make sure that we're not taken for granted. We have to make sure that we're given the opportunity to use our opportunities and to be able to be counted, okay? Because our vote, hopefully, will be the vote that will make a difference in this
election. Absolutely, and that's a great way to wrap up. I want to say that this is the definition of Greek unity and the power of our organizations, for all four of us to be from four different organizations, but be able to sit around this table and talk about the great work we can do, should do, and will do in the days, the years, the months ahead. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I will repeat, this is what the coalition does. I hope that folks watching who haven't joined the coalition will. I want to thank my panelists because you are all amazing and I learned so much from the three of you. So to all of the Latino Greeks watching tonight, I hope you will make your voices heard in this election, whether you vote in person, whether you vote through absentee ballot, whatever it is, make a plan to vote. Make sure the folks you know and love make a plan to vote. Your line sisters, your chapter sisters, your line brothers, your chapter brothers, anybody in your region, whatever it takes, make sure we come out in mass on election day, win by a landslide. If you want to join the coalition, please reach out. You can follow us again on social media. On Facebook, Latino Greeks for Biden. On Twitter, LG4 Biden Harris. And on Instagram, Latino Greeks for Biden. And to anyone who RSVP'd for this event, you've received a Zoom link to join us after for a watch party for a VP Biden's town hall. So again, thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone. And look forward to all the great work that we will continue to do as a coalition.
Thank you.